Yo, what up, Street Talks? Eric Kim. All right, so some thoughts. This is about sports theory. So I'm watching the new MJ documentary, The Last Dance. Very, very good. And this is just some like rando thought to have about just sports in general. So what do sports mean in the context of real life and everything in between? I'll just share with you just some random candid thoughts I had. So, you know, just a little bit about myself. When I was personally growing up, you know, I played a decent amount of sports. I was like never like the world's best sports player, but I like to play. I was, you know, I was competitive. I didn't really care to win all the time, but I just like to have fun. And actually, for me, the thing I loved about sports, I love the physicality of it all. So, for example, you know, I played football. My sophomore, junior years, I played tennis my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And for me, the thing that was interesting is, like, even the reason I got into like American football was I always had like when I was a kid, I was like a fat kid, and I was teased for being a fat kid. And as a consequence, I kind of wanted to prove myself like physically, and so I did that. You know, I started lifting weights and trying to assert my like physical dominance, whatever. And maybe also part of it for myself was trying to overcome these stereotypes of Asian guys being like physically inferior or whatever. And so, you know, played football. My sophomore year, I was outside linebacker. Junior year, I was inside linebacker. And once again, I was never the best player, nor did I really care to be the best player, but I just did it for the camaraderie, for fun. And I'm just kind of curious. I'm just like, I just want to see what this is like. And so this is actually the funny thing. This is just me going off a little bit on tangent. Is I even now when I think about it, when people are really into watching sports, like sports fanatics, right? Like it's called a fan because they're like fanatics, like almost like religious fanatics, where people know so much about the athletes and the sport, but then they don't, first of all, they might not play it themselves, or secondly, they've never played it, or third, you know, all the time they devote watching it, they could be playing the thing. Why watch it? So sports to me is a little weird. It's like, it's almost like pornography. It's like, would you rather be having real life sex, or would you rather be watching somebody else on the screen do it? So it's a little bit strange. And in some ways, when we watch great sports athletes, we watch MJ or Kobe or watch LeBron, whatever it is. Essentially, this is my theory. You're kind of getting a second-hand high off of these great athletes, and you feel like them. You kind of like, you're almost sucking in the same dopamine, serotonin, and the feeling of victory and dominance. And this is the thing that's so funny about being a sports athlete, or a sports fan. There's really no risk in being a fan, because like, how do you say this? I mean, at worst, when you're watching a game, you're just kind of wasting your time, but your actual skin is not on the line. Whether your team wins or loses doesn't really change the outcome of your life. And you know, I'm sorry to say, as a sports fan, your support of a team or dissupport of a team isn't actually going to change the outcome. So, which takes me to like another thing in life, is that, oh, perhaps we should just focus on things in life which we can actually control. So, and this is also the funny thing too, is that if you're watching sports on TV, it's so easy to be critical of athletes. It's like, you know, you're watching football and you see what looks like a quote-unquote easy pass being fumbled or dropped, and then, you know, you yell at the athletes for being such bad athletes. But that's, dude, I'm like, okay, unless you have actually played real football in real life, where you have a fucking helmet on you, your line of vision is like that, you have all these pads which make you super bulky, and you know, as a receiver, I was never good at catching the ball, so that's why I like to play defense and tackle people, is that as a fucking cornerback or you know, wide receiver, whatever you are, you're running full speed, you have to pick up your hands, you can't actually see behind you, so then somehow you just stick out your arms and it magically falls into your hands. So what athletes do is quite amazing. And also the problem with sports is, you know, you're watching the sports POV from the air or God view, whatever it is, and you have this omnipotent like God view of everything that's going on. But when you're playing real life sports, it's so funny because like I played football for like 2 years in high school. I was actually not 100% sure how the game was really played on the offensive side. Like, so like whenever I watch, you know, sports on TV or watch football on TV, I kind of still don't really know what's going on, and I kind of forget like, oh, you know, I forget the downs and the seconds and stuff like that because I had a very specialized role. I played defense. I was the linebacker, and you know, your role as a linebacker is very specific. You know, just go forward, tackle the guy, or go back and try to intercept or block the things. So when you're watching athletes on TV or watching basketball, you know, I like to play basketball growing up too, and you know, unless you've ever played sports or, you know, competitive anything at a really high level, and then, you know, somebody chokes and doesn't make the last shot, it's like, we should not be allowed to criticize people who were in those precarious situations because we don't have the real life experience. And this is actually another thought too, is that like, more respect to the coaches who were once actual real life players than people who are just coaches for the sake of coaches. So like Steve Kerr, you know, I think he's super legit. You know, Larry Bird, and you know, all the greats. Even when it comes to sports commentators, I think we should actually only trust and respect or legitimize the opinion of sports commentators who were actually once real athletes. So like Charles Barkley, you know, his great case, great player. And so when he's commentating on TV, you know, he's actually talking from real life experience, whereas like if you're just like Joe Schmo rando dude, right, then like your opinion doesn't really matter because you don't have the real life experience. It's almost like you know, imagine if you're a virgin, you've never had sex, and then but you've been watching porn all your life, and then when you watch other people having sex in real life, it's so easy to criticize their penetration technique or whatever, right? And also, this is one thing I found that's so funny about photography, and especially street photography, because street photography, it's kind of like its own little beast. Like, to have the courage and the guts to shoot street photography is quite different from any other form of photography out there. So if you have like, I don't know, like, you know, a landscape photographer or a flower photographer criticizing a street photographer, I'm like, yo, you don't, like, okay, you're allowed to have your own opinion, but your opinion carries less weight because you don't actually have the real life experience of shooting street photography. And so essentially what I mean to say is always be very skeptical and sus of other people's opinions, especially if they don't have the real life experience of doing X, Y, and Z. And some other, you know, I think I'll continue to talk about sports because it's such an integral part of American, now global society. So when it comes to sports, the biggest problem about sports is that it is a zero-sum game, is that there's a clear winner or loser, but real life ain't like that, right? Like real life, there are no clear winners or losers. And so it's like, so the sad thing about being an athlete is your whole life you're just thinking winning or losing. But you know, in real life there's no teams, in real life there's no clear winners or losers. So when you're thrust in the real world outside in the arena of sports, then your vision of the real world kind of becomes perverted because you think too much about winning or losing rather than, you know, thinking deeper philosophical truths about life and stuff like that. So essentially, moral of the story is, don't get suckered by sports and be critical and sus of everything you see, hear, and watch.